The month of May comes to a close, and the Real Racers Virtual Club head back to the United States for the final 4 rounds in the Spring Formula 3 Championship. Anders Krohn toyed with the competition last time out at the home of British Motorsport. This time around, though, with some more real-world competition, it might not be so easy for Anders Krohn to head back to victory lane here live on RaceSpotTV. Delighted you can join us once more on a Tuesday evening as myself, Arjuna Kenkipati, and Nolan Rempel will take you through the next hour some of the most entertaining racing we have on a weekly basis live on RaceSpotTV. Nolan, we head now to round 8 of this championship and a 4-race swing that will take us across the United States, ending up in Road America, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, but the championship is on the line.
It most certainly is, and what better way to kick off this championship battle than at this beautiful facility just off the Winter Highway in Braselton, Georgia. This track is, of course, a favorite for many racing fans, particularly the United States of America. One of my personal favorite tracks of all time, especially on the iRacing service. So no doubt we are in for one heck of a show here tonight.
Take a look at this track map, 2.54 miles and 12 turns. And the thing that you don't get from this track map that we were talking about just before we came on air, Nolan, is the elevation changes. You think about from turn 1 where you climb up the hill in towards turn 3, then down the S's in towards turn number 5 where you'll rocket over the curbs, and then of course turn 10 and 10A and 10B, I should say, at the end of that very long back straightaway. Over the hill you will plunge underneath the bridge and across the start-finish lap to complete a lap here in Braselton, Georgia.
It is definitely a very challenging facility, and the elevation change could play into a big part here over the course of today's race. One corner to watch on in particular that I've been noticing, Arjuna, is actually turn 7. It's that final right-hander right before the very, very long back straightaway. A lot of drivers so far in practice have been really struggling getting on the power there. With these Formula 3 cars and how much horsepower they can have underneath them with the power-to-weight ratio these things have, it's so easy to spin the tires on the exit and send your car for a loop. So especially on the opening laps, going to be one thing to look out for.
And while this is a track that is known for sports car competition, don't be fooled. Open wheel racing can be quite entertaining around here. Rick Sheldon has a 3-point advantage at the top of the championship, but you can look all the way down to 4th, where defending champion Kurt Panzengru has 109 points. And really, at the end of the day here, Nolan, it's going to be an interesting kind of finish here because we might have 2 races to talk about here. The likes of Anders Krohn and Nolan Siegel, even someone like Matt Buckler that has been very quick in recent weeks. They'll be at the front. The likes of Sheldon, Fisher, Escajeda, and Panzegru. It's all about being consistent and getting to the end of this 25-minute race.
Patience is going to be key, and no doubt some attrition will play a part in this race, just like it has about every single race before. Rick Sheldon, in particular, has his work cut out for him tonight if he really wants to maintain that points lead. He's coming into this just 3 points ahead of Hayden Fisher. So far, though, in practice, he's been a solid 4/10 off of just the second-to-last driver. So Rick Sheldon could be in for rough run tonight. So this could be one of the first times all season where we see the championship really start to switch hands.
So we've still got about 90 seconds or so left in this free practice session that the drivers get to warm themselves up, and we'll rock and roll our way into a 15-minute open qualifying session. Provisionally, we have 13 cars in the field. Anders Krohn is on the top of the timing sheets, but only 2/10 back is Nolan Siegel, who we're seeing for the first time here on a Tuesday evening live on RaceSpotTV. I think he's been a bit busy with real racing responsibilities. That's the great thing about this series. Nolan, I realize now that I'm going to have to be careful here because that's going to be quite confusing, Nolan, talking about Nolan. But at the end of the day, we've got the real racers and then we've got the track rats as well. And then that interesting in-between, of course, where we've seen the likes of, if I'm remembering correctly here, Dave Anderson, who, it's not Dave Anderson, excuse me, whoever raced in that LMP3 car, John Schauman, excuse me, we haven't seen for a couple of weeks, but riding that, in-between line of blurring virtual and real motorsports.
It's a very fine blur as well, and you got a couple of guys that have experience in open wheel machines as well. You got a USF 2000 driver in here. You, of course, have Anders Krohn, who we believe, if I remember correctly here, was a former F2000 champion as well. So you got a couple of guys that have quite a bit of open wheel experience in here. Then, of course, you've got other guys that are Indy Lights drivers. And it's going to be a very entertaining run to see how this is going to go. Kurt Panzengru just perfectly demonstrated why turn 10 is such a fearsome corner, trying to go side by side through there. Got a bit of a tap there from Nolan Siegel right through the apex.
You can't cut too much of that inside as well. That will, in qualifying especially, invalidate your lap time. But with 15 minutes, plenty of times for drivers to set their fastest lap time. The practice session comes to a close, and the track will be hot for 15 minutes of group qualifying. This is always so much fun. Here are the provisional results from practice, and you can see the top 10 drivers separated by 1.3 seconds, but at a track like this, where I think that's Matthew Escajeda that's gone for a tumble down into the final corners just as we switch on over into qualifying. At a track like this, Nolan, draft is going to be more important than I think people are thinking about.
It absolutely will be. I mean, there are really 3 big parts where the draft can play a big part. Really 4 parts if you really count turn 1 as a passing opportunity. First big run where the draft can play into a factor is from turn 11 with the massive run all the way through 12 and down for turn 1. The second is actually from turn 4 down to turn 5 at the S-Sys there. You guys get a pretty good run off of those corners there. Of course, the biggest opportunity, though, will be from turn 7 in the run down to the turn 10 chicane. That is one of the biggest points to watch out for tonight. The longest straightaway on the racetrack, covered about the entire length of the track as well. And that is going to, by far, be the best passing opportunity we got on the day.
Watching Zach Hudson coming in towards turn number 6 and turn 7 here off camber. Very important to get the momentum, and you can see there not using the inside curb. You will see drivers being a bit more aggressive with that through the course of this session, and they got this opportunity I should say now, Nolan, to kind of warm their tires up, and this is going to be important because track temperatures are actually quite cooler than I'd expect right now. 20 degrees in the air and 29 degrees Celsius, I should say, in terms of the track temperature. So it will take a couple of laps for these tires to reach their peak operating window. Plenty of time for these drivers to get comfortable with their cars.
You talk about the track temperatures of June, and I agree. It's definitely a bit colder than you'd expect. It's certainly colder than it is in my room at the moment. 85 degrees Fahrenheit down to the track, and it's pretty calmly out there as well. Only 2-mile-an-hour winds just blowing with a very light breeze up to the north, so not a lot of real track conditions for these guys to compete with. They're really going to be fighting each other more so than the car or the track beneath them.
We're on board with Zach Hudson. Let's go for a lap here and maybe take the next one as well to ride up through turns 1 and 2. Down the hill in through the S's, you can see Hudson trying to commit as much as he can. Brakes just before that curb on the right-hand side. Interestingly, not trying to get onto that curb on the exit of turn 5. Doesn't want to unsettle the car and makes his way down into turn 6. Carry as much speed as you can because this corner is cambered in, but this one, turn 7, the crucial one, is not. Slight lock up there. He loses the rear end as well. That will be Hudson back down onto pit road, I would think, to restart his qualifying attempt. I think you mentioned that slightly earlier, Nolan. That's going to be a very interesting place to see cars get the power down.
And what did I say? I mean, it's always getting on the power. There is a small little lip in the road right at the apex, and that's right when these cars start at the most. And it's also conveniently right where you get on the power as well. Now, in sports car racing, traditionally is not that big of an issue. It's a huge issue, though, with these lightweight Dallara F3s as we watch Hayden Fisher dancing the car around through the turn 10 chicane, up and over the turn 11 rise and down to the flat out right hand of the turn 12. One of the most favorite corners when you get it right across the line. A 1:17.058. That's 2.1 seconds behind Anders Krohn, who for now maintains provisional pole with a 1:14.918.
Just getting those tires, I think, up to temperature. Sheldon a bit slower than Fisher as well. We jump on board with the Eddie Van Halen inspired 63 cars. He climbs up the hill. Watch here in turn 3. Doesn't necessarily use all of the track on offer. Maybe we can get a look at what someone like Nolan Siegel or Anders Krohn is doing out front, because you can see on the left-hand side here, Nolan Brempel. Man, this is going to get confusing. I'm going to have to make sure I call him Siegel and you Nolan here to avoid all sorts of confusion up here in the RaceSpotTV booth. But the top 2 drivers, they're 8/10 clear of 3rd place Jackson Ball.
They certainly are, and no doubt, there's actually quite a lot of room for these guys to improve as well. I mean, you look at Anders Krohn. I want to point out that currently his fastest time in qualifying is a 1:14.918. His fastest practice time, a 1:13.749. He's about 1.2 seconds slower with his first qualifying lap than his fastest practice lap. No doubt the draft had a little bit of say in the 1:13 time that Krohn set, but he certainly has a lot of room to improve as well in this one. So we are on board with Rick Sheldon here, one of the bigger drivers coming into today in the number 63 machine, darting his way through that final chicane as well. And the championship leader looking more comfortable, I think, this time around. I'll see what the lap time will be. Krohn has gone even faster with a 14.665, so feeling very comfortable. It's a 16.183, so 1 second quicker for Sheldon, but still 1.5 seconds adrift from Anders Krohn. Last week's race winner, defending series champion, goes up into 6th. Jeremy Clark, who's been very steady over the last couple of weeks here, Nolan, goes up in towards 4th and then gets pipped by Dave Anderson. So the times are coming in thick and fast, and you will start to notice they are getting quite close between 3rd and 6th position. They certainly are. I mean, you looked at the third down through sixth place. It's only about 2-3 tenths, if that, separated those drivers. Then, of course, you got Anderson just in the mix as well, just over 3 tenths back from Nolan Siegel. Here is Joe Butler, currently on his second flying lap of the day, and it looks like he will not be able to get a good one on this one either. It looks like he was trying to kind of scrub the tires, warm them up a little bit, make sure he gets a proper run up here for his third flying lap of the session. First one wasn't validated, had a bit of it off somewhere on the track.
So he'll be up to speed. There is Anders Krohn. What's it going to be this time? 4 tenths quicker, and I tell you what, maybe we can jump on board and get that onboard look as he throws himself into turn 1 using all the track and then some as well. Some runoff area for his advantage. You'll see here, uses the curb on the left to cut the curb on the right-hand side. Some cones kicked up in front of him. No danger there for the 47, slinging his way down in towards turn number 5 here. Watch this commitment. Let's see how much of the curb he chooses to use. Clobbers the curb on the left, clobbers the curb on the right, over the top of the hill as well, and now down in towards turn 6. This is looking fast, and the Racing Point liveried machine in towards turn 7, looking very comfortable as well. Onto the power nicely for Anders Krohn. This is that one opportunity that we'll see in the race for drivers to maybe just take a breath, get a sip of water into their system, and focus on the important braking zone down at the end of the hill in front of them. Butler into 4th. The times are coming in even faster now. Nolan Siegel down into 5th position, but on board with Krohn. We dive down into this 10A, braking at the 150, which is a bit earlier than I thought. Uses all the curb on the left so he can set up to get on the power as early as possible underneath the bridge, down across the start-finish line. What's the lap time going to be here? It's 11, 12, 13. It's a 13.871. So once more, he breaks into the 113s, and left side of the screen, no one within 1 second of Anders Krohn.
That is just over 1/10 slower than his fastest practice lap. So Anders Krohn certainly on it tonight. Definitely going to be the man to beat here in this one. So the 47 car puts himself even further on provisional pole in very convincing fashion. Oh, maybe not for long, but look at Siegel puts in a flyer and is less than 1/10 of a second off of Krohn's time now.
That's what we expected. The competition coming from the USF 2000 driver Jackson Bull into 3rd, half a second off the pace. So the 2 races that we're expecting to see developing out here in qualifying as well. Siegel down through the S's, and talk about someone who's got a limitless potential potentially. Max Butler 4 tenths off. Oh, it's getting closer and closer, but a high school sophomore here, Nolan, competes not just in the USF 2000 on the road to Indy, but also in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge in an Audi R8 GT4.
Audi R GT4, and hopefully that is one car that we can see coming to the iRacing service very soon. The moment we've got ourselves a McLaren, a BMW, and a Porsche. So Audi still has yet to make their entrance in the GT4 category here on iRacing. We'll have to see if that ever leads to anything further down the line. But for Siegel, he's just under 1/10 of a second away, or he was that last time by. Krohn has already improved at this time, and now he is faster just about than he was from practice, only a few thousandths of a second off. Krohn's now up by about 2/10 of a second. So Siegel takes all the curb possible on the left side of the track. Gonna cut this one in for the final corner. Can he manage to pip him at the line? A 14.356, not gonna be enough, about half a second slower than his last lap around, and Siegel looks like had that lap invalidated as well. It wasn't even logged as a time as well. Take a look at Max Butler driving his way through the final set of corners. He is about half a second back from Krohn. What can he do? Can he put himself onto the front row?
A wonderful livery for Max Butler. Interesting livery for Nolan Siegel as well. 14.117, but I don't think it counted there. It did it. So now only 3.5 tenths separating the top 3. We might have a 3rd contender for this kind of a race, and it'll be interesting to see just how aggressive Butler is given some of his misfortunes so far in the season. On board with Jackson Bull as he comes down in towards turn 6. I must say, some interesting liveries, and what we saw from Nolan Siegel, no sponsors, no nothing on the car, but almost a matching pattern there between his helmet and the car itself. It'll be interesting to see if we can get another look at that one and maybe zoom in, Nolan, because interested to see if everything actually lined up across the entire car.
Kind of reminds me of Rick Sheldon's helmet design when you think about it, because Sheldon also has a very similar design, very red helmet to match a very red car. So I have to see how those 2 drivers' paint schemes will look as we get further into the race. Ball out to the final corner, looking to promote himself further up, and within half a second, kind of bounces off the limit of the bow a couple times, down through 11 and 12, and again across the line, a 114.106. It is going to be enough, though, for Ball to put himself up in a 3rd.
It's a 4-horse race now. Look at this. Jackson Bull getting in on the fun as well. There is that rather interesting color. And I tell you what, it's not necessarily a pattern on the car. It's just a pure carbon machine there. So Nolan Siegel rocking up to Road Atlanta, only focused on his pace, and look at how much of the track he uses there. Be interesting to see just how quick he is this time around as he look at him throwing that car into the corner. I mean, he's got experience in open wheel machines in the real world and carries that over into the sim as well. Escajeda up into 6th, 1 second off the pace. But of course, that championship fight we'll be watching out for. Championship leader Rick Sheldon all the way down at the tail end of the qualifying order, but still 5 minutes for him to jump back up the field as Nolan Siegel's internet decides that he doesn't need to be in the virtual Brazelton, Georgia. Gets onto the anchors for the penultimate time this lap. I'm not sure if he used a bit too much of the curb on the inside once more. We were talking about it invalidating the lap time, but down the hill, here comes Nolan Siegel, and we will wait to get the lap time in the timing tower.
No lap time for Nolan Siegel, and I know exactly where he got it to. Turn 7 just went the slightest bit too wide, barely clipped the grass, but that's all it takes to validate the lap time. Oh, he's going to validate this one too. Runs too wide through turn 3 there, kind of pushed up too much onto the apex and clipped the grass again. I think that is also enough to be able to invalidate yet another lap. So Siegel's just trying to scramble around to start another one at this point. And look at the car twitching as well. Of course, these things incredibly light. Only about 550 kilograms, holding the 220 horsepower underneath them. So that is one of those corners where you can just see how light these cars are. They just bounce like they're nothing over those curves.
Wait and see for a couple more cars to come through this wonderful shot. There we go. That's not Escajeda, excuse me. That's Nicholas Leo in the yellow Alpha Tauri. There's Max Butler, followed by the one car of Panzengru. I'm watching at the line, by the way. Anders Krohn has gone even faster, a 1:13.731. Oh, the pace keeps on coming, and now up 2/10 faster than Nolan Siegel. Butler, and this time it's Joe Butler, goes up into the top 6, so we got 2 Butlers up there towards the front of this field. I am excited, Nolan. I just, based on what we've seen these past few weeks, I know that we are in for a very intriguing 25-minute shootout here.
I would like to kind of point out as well, we've been talking a little bit about how, we can kind of get the 2 Butlers confused. They look the same on the timing screen, of course. So I want to just point this out for you, Arjuna. Now you not only have 2 Butlers to contend with, you got 2 Nolans as well. So we're just making sure you're having a very difficult time with this one today.
My brain is going insane. I tell you what, with 3 minutes left, we'll wait and see where the drivers come to on the board. Krohn looks like he's going on a pretty decent lap right now, but of course this track built back in 1969 in just 6 months' time. A very interesting track that back in 1978 found itself sold by the original owners and bouncing around ownership groups before going into bankruptcy in 1993. Then Dr. Don Panos, father of American sports car racing, especially in the modern generation, Krohn across the line, doesn't improve with a 14.257, so I wonder if those tires are maybe just burned off. What for Siegel here, but Dr. Don Panos really did make this a home and a venue for sports car racing. That chicane that you saw these drivers coming through, that was put in to conform with FIA standards to bring Petit Le Mans to this very track. Siegel across the line doesn't improve either. We are now into those final 2 laps. The pressure is on Nolan. They will get the opportunity to complete their flying laps once the checkered flag flies, because this is open car qualifying.
It's one of the things I really love about open car qualifying is the fact that you get these guys to finish their laps. And I think it's a bit of a shame, really, that you don't have that opportunity in closed car qualifying. I really wish we could do that as well, but wishful thinking, I would suppose. And it looks like one car might have a bit of an off there through turn number 10. We'll have to take a look here. There is one driver that's had a bit of an off. 2 cars having offs. Those were Matthew Escajeda and Joe Butler at turn 7. Escajeda had to spin and Butler had to scramble to avoid him. Take a look here at the number 12 car. Darting his way up through for 6 and down for 7. Escajeda is already a bit clear. Looks like Sheldon's had a spin just in front of him, though.
Rocking and rolling, not necessarily the way that he would have wanted to. Will get one more opportunity if he can cool those tires down. He's now giving the draw to the car behind. Looked a bit close there, but down the hill, here comes the 12. Ball is only 4/10 off the pace. 1.5 tenths behind Siegel as he throws that car, locks up the inside front as well, but good momentum carried now up the hill and down towards the start-finish line. Look for the lap time here. With 50 seconds left, you'll get one more shot here at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. And it's a 14.095, so he does improve, but not much more. Extends the gap to the Butler behind, but not close enough to Siegel in front here, Nolan.
He's only about a 10.5 off of Nolan Siegel's time, so he does still have a little bit more that he can make here. As the clock continues to run down, he got 25 seconds remaining. Anders Krone, I think, is right on the cusp of being able to go for another lap here, but I think it's going to be at the point where the 47 machine will not be able to get another flying lap in, and he'll start the drivers to finish off their time lapse as we continue to wait for the times to tick on down. 2/10 separate Siegel from Krone, and Jackson Ball, another 10.5 back from Siegel, the Ball as well. So as we watch Jackson Ball come through turn number 7 and started to dart his way up through the sweepers of 8 and 9, up and over the hill before down the hill again for turn 10.
Heck of a flag flies in qualifying then. Krone even faster, a 1:13.519, more than 4/10 clear of Siegel. Watch for the lap times though, as Ball will be the first of them, currently in third, almost 6/10 off the pace. He went faster last time around. Don't necessarily know just how quick that car looked in through turn 10. 11:12, the time is counting, comes across the start-finish line, 2/10 off, does not improve. Who's behind him? That might go a bit faster here though, Nolan.
Nicholas Leo is still coming across the line as well, just darting his way to the final corner now. He's currently sitting in 7th place, so probably not a driver to contend for the win, and he doesn't improve either. Half a second up at his fast time with the 1:14.575. Kurt Pentegrau next one across from 12th. He improves on his time, but not enough to put himself up into 11th. Max Butler bails out of his lap, is going to take it down pit road, and that, I believe, is going to finish up all the drivers that were out there on their flying laps.
It will. So there you see your championship, defending champion, I should say. He will be starting down in 12th position, but the championship leader starts behind him as well. It's going to be a tough race for Sheldon, especially with some of his championship rivals closing that gap. We still got about 30 seconds before we make our way into the race session to take a look at our starting grid. Let's just remind you of the point situation, as there's Barney the flagman very vigorously flying the checkered flag, not as stylishly as RaceSpot's own Aaron Likens, if I do say so myself, for those watching the past month of May in the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500. Sheldon is 3 points in front of Hayden Fisher, who is qualified in 11th position, with Escajeda in 3rd and Panzengru in 4th. It's going to be close. It's going to be tight. Let's go take a look then at the starting grid for round number 8 in the Real Racers Virtual Club and the spring Formula 3 season. Victorious 7 days ago, and on pole once more, Anders Krone will take us to the green flag alongside Nolan Siegel, the very young 16-year-old who'll be trying to take the fight to him. But 4/10 adrift. Let's see if the race pace is a little bit closer and Krone doesn't play any games. Jackson Ball, Max Butler on row number 2, and Zach Hudson, Joe Butler on row number 3. So the Butlers lining up. Let's see if they work together on this start, with Nicholas Leo and Dave Anderson on row 4. Jeremy Clark, Matthew Escajeda completing the top 10, with Hayden Fisher, Kurt Panzengru, row 6. And then the championship name that you want to keep your eye on, Rick Sheldon, the championship leader, will line up at the tail end of this field. And despite the fact that the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta recently got an update, so it's looking modern and up to the 2021 iRacing graphical standards, we still will have a full pace lap around this track. So Nolan, we've got the next 2.54 miles to preview what's going to happen here, and I always like to put my commentators on the spot. Nolan Siegel, Anders Krone, who do you think is going to win here today?
I'm going to honestly go on to say Anders Krone. I mean, he was 4/10 up in qualifying. He was another 2/10 up in practice. He's the driver to beat today. So all Anders Krone has to do is basically not choke this one out, and he's going to be able to walk away with a very satisfying win here.
What about then in this championship picture? Who do you think is going to come out in the championship lead heading now to Watkins Glen in upstate New York? Because we were talking about this before we came on air. Not necessarily a track that you'd associate and think about with open wheel racing, but it really can be quite interesting. It all depends on how much confidence and let's use a Spanish word, cojones, that you have to actually throw this car around the track.
It's going to be very interesting to see who's going to come out up on top in terms of the championship battle, because you got Ray Sheldon, who's down in 13th place, and you look at qualifying, the two drivers that are just 3 and 4 points behind respectively, Hayden Fish and Kurt Panzengru, they're also, only about 11. They're starting in 11th and 12th as well.
Well, Nolan, I don't know if you just saw this, but on my timing screen, I saw Hayden Fisher pulling down onto pit road, so 2nd place in the championship and taking the fight to the championship leader as well. There was some sort of technical issue, and I'm not exactly sure what's happened, but all that I know is that Hayden Fisher, the professional kite surfer, is going to have to start from pit lane.
Well, with that in mind, I'm immediately going to put my money on Matthew Escajeda to make a run at least closing in the championship on Rick Sheldon. Of course, 1 point, though, in these point standings, it's not going to be enough. He only gets that 1 point. Escajeda is going to have to improve his standing here in this race if he wants to really take away that points lead from Rick Sheldon.
In through turn 7, this will be one of the most crucial opportunities, I think, to make things happen. And this Formula 3 car is going to be so interesting. Where do you think is going to really be the place that if you were behind the driver's seat right now, Nolan, that you would be thinking about the pass? Turn 7, we've seen drivers make mistakes when they get the power down, but it's this long, inviting run in the entry and the braking zone into 10A and 10B.
I think it kind of speaks for itself, especially when you're at open wheel cars. Turn 10, it's the best possible passing opportunity on the track. It's a very hard braking zone into a tight chicane. It's definitely not so much like a sweeping corner like you would find at turn 6. So turn 10, that would definitely be the best possible place to make a pass at these Dallara Formula 3s.
I'm just going to go on record to say that I expect at least 1, if not 2, passes down into turn 3 in today's action. So the month of May has come to a close, and it was a trip around the world, starting in Phillip Island and making the trip up to Japan before heading to the home of British Motorsports. The next 4 rounds will decide the Spring Formula 3 Championship here in the Real Racers Virtual Club, and we will stay in the US for a grand tour of some of the greatest venues in the world. Oh, look at that checkup on the start as Anders Krohn holds the field up. I wonder if there's damage, but the green flag flies in the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, and it's Nolan Siegel that tucks into second position as we dive our way down in towards turn 1. Butler challenges Ball, but nothing doing for now, as up the hill into turn 3. It's all single file between the top 5. Zach Hudson holds on to 5th position, looking in his rearview mirrors as Joe Butler and Nicholas Leo looked to the inside for just a moment. But despite that checkup on the start, single file down through the S's. As I say that, though, that's Joe Butler that loses control and fortunately doesn't bounce back up into the path of the other cars, but Butler straight down to pit road.
That was a very sudden snap for Joe Butler in the number 7 car. What in the world has happened there? Slam that concrete barrier, and parts went flying everywhere from the carbon fiber monocoque chassis. Meanwhile, though, Anders Krohn still well clear of the cars behind, about 6/10 back to Nolan Siegel, who's trying to close in with the draft, but he's not really tucking in the line as much as you'd expect him to. So Anders Krohn is almost certainly going to lead this opening lap if he doesn't screw up turn 10A and 10B. Hudson, meanwhile, trying to make a run at Max Butler down to the chicane, forcing the number 6 car to go on the defensive.
Oh, good move there, but Butler able to just about hold on, and we'll see if we can get the RaceSpotTV replay up for what happened to Joe Butler. But I just wonder if the checkup that we saw coming down the hill to start the race maybe just inflicted some damage. Our producer's right on the money, and it doesn't even look like some damage there. Nolan just clips the inside of the grass and spears himself into the wall, and that car instantly was done.
Like cars, only 550 kilograms, and those curves, they can upset them in a hurry. You can get away with running over those curves potentially in GT4s, GT3s, LMP2 prototypes, touring cars, the usual stuff that races at this track. Dallara Formula 3s, not so much. It's in fact shocking that they've been so daring at running so wide over that curve as well. Taking another ride aboard with Joe Butler. It's so little as well. Right there, that's all it takes. Slides around and just body slams the concrete barrier. One of the worst places where you can have an impact at this track.
The tire tether doing a pretty good job there, and I'm sure Connor Daly would have hoped that tire tethers, at least that tire would have been connected to Graham Rahal's car just this past weekend in the Indianapolis 500. Down the back straightaway with just over 2 minutes done in today's action, in a single file basically throughout the entire field. The gap for the race lead already up to 1.5 seconds, so I wonder if we'll see some of the gamesmanship from Anders Krohn that we saw just a week ago, because that was some fun that he had, Nolan, but at the end of the day still made it to victory lane.
Still made it to victory lane indeed, and definitely hoping to maybe make victory lane again once more throughout the season. So we're on board with Jeremy Clark. Now, it's a bit of a long shot for Clark to be able to kind of come away with the race lead in today's race, and in fact, the victory, he's got himself about 6.7 seconds back as well.
Look at him using all of the inside curb as well. It's been a steady season for Clark, who finds himself not just 7th place on track, but 7th place in the championship as well with 60 points. Average starting position of 7th, and has been moving his way up. Oh, Nicholas Leo wide through turn number 5. We've got another car into the barriers, and I'm not sure if Leo has sustained some kind of suspension damage. Dave Anderson gets on through as well. And I think we're going to need to take a look at exactly what happened there. It's side by side coming out of turn number 7 as well as we ride on board with Jeremy Clark. There's Jackson Ball alongside Max Butler, who gets his way up into the podium positions, but it will still be Ball looking to try and get the place down. Aggressive defense there from Butler, jinking his way to the inside. Can Ball carry his momentum around the outside of 10A? Decides to try the over-under, but Butler parks it on the inside of the second apex and holds on to 3rd position.
Maybe not for long, though. Ball's got to run on him through turn number 12, so Ball could have a dive here into turn 1 if he really feels like doing it. Max Butler goes on the defensive. Ball's going to try to fight the outside line and get around this one. Going to go once again for the over-under and the run towards turn 2. Trying to get the crossover again, but it's just not going to happen for him. He's just going to be too far back. Oh, Max Butler runs a bit wide, though. That lets Ball close in yet again down through turn 3 and 4.
And as Nicholas Leo meanders his way down pit road, so clearly some suspension damage there. It's all kicking off and it's all intensifying as all. Zach Hudson almost does the same exact thing. Does that open the door to Jeremy Clark in behind? Looks to the inside in through turn 6, but not necessarily where I think you can get the pass done. And indeed has to back out of that one, but onto this back straightaway. It's going to be important to get the momentum down. Take a look at that. It's just a bit too much of the curb, and he spears off to the right-hand side, and I think instantly it looks as though that car is crabbing and potentially some right rear suspension damage, but it can all change so quickly. There's almost contact between Clark and Hudson. Down the hill, they will plunge side by side. Clark backs out of this one, you know, and just careful racing. They are getting a bit more aggressive than we've seen in the past, Nolan, but they're also doing it with the same consideration that they've been doing it in the last couple of weeks.
That's what we want to see as well. You get these battles that can tend to develop for longer. And in fact, one battle that we're going to be having to watch as well is T3, Max Butler and Jackson Ball still dicing it out as well, right up there for that final podium position.
It is quite close, and look at how much of the inside curve Ball will use. That sometimes can get you a slowdown penalty. I don't think he's having to pay the piper, at least for now. You can see, though, these 4 cars still very much separated by the draft lock. Not so for Krohn and Siegel. It's now almost 4 seconds between the 47 and the 10. We'll see if Krohn just backs his race back up and maybe just has a bit more of a wheel-to-wheel battle like he did with Max Butler 7 days ago. Butler is about 3.5 seconds behind Siegel as well. And this time as they come onto the back straightaway, though, is a bit more comfortable, Nolan. 1 second in front, almost out of draft range as well.
Almost out of drafting range as well, but still not quite out of the woods just yet. Jackson Ball still trying to pressure Max Butler for the 3rd and final podium position. The driver under pressure at the moment, biggest in the field though, is Max Hudson. Currently still under some significant pressure from Jeremy Clark just behind for P5 on the racetrack. Some significant points still up for grabs here in these more midfield positions here at the tail end of the top half of the field. And if Jeremy Clark can keep with him here, he could potentially have a dive at him down to the turn 10 this next time by.
I'm very much enjoying the conversation in the YouTube chat, by the way, where they're talking about a Mario Kart League, and maybe the next step that we'll see in the future here. It's all in front of Clark. Hudson makes that mistake, but he's got cones not just on one side of the car, but I think on both sides. One of them gets ejected. Now the question is there still something buried under the right front tire? Down through turn 5, momentum on the side of Clark, and I do think there is some sort of damage or cone. We'll get the better look there. It seems all clear, but the 87 up into the top 5 here.
Zach Hudson, the move that he made to the outside was more of a reactionary thing because Jackson Ball had a bit of a right front lockup right down in the turn 2 as well, and he actually went wide around the smoke to try to push through the corner. So I think he was just a bit caught off guard by that, missed his braking point, and that's what caused Zach Hudson to really drop back in a big way. Take a look back here at the number 11 car of Hayden Fisher. He is currently sitting second place in the point stands coming into this race, and take a replay here with Rick Sheldon, and he's had a big moment as well, right down through 5, and just barely taps the wall with the right rear.
Might have gotten away with that one, you know. Looks like the slightest of contacts, and I'm not sure if the 63 is still there. He is still out there and circulating in 11th position as well. So for the championship leader, it's important that he recovers where he can. Hayden Fisher, after starting in pit road, now in the top 10, but has to try and close the gap to the likes of Matthew Escajeda, who is in 7th and might be in a position to take the championship lead as we head to upstate New York. What a run we're in for here. Next time we're in action 7 days from now, we will be at the Watkins Glen International Circuit. The following week after that, we head to Wine Country and Sonoma. That will be a very interesting challenge, especially since a lot of these drivers have real-world experience at that very track. Our season finale, I said at the start, we will head to Road America, and there is no better place to race a car like the Formula 3 in a championship finale, Nolan, than Road America. It's got the long straights, it's got the 90-degree corners where you can make passes happen basically everywhere. It's going to be intriguing to get a bit more action than we're seeing here today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, besides Atlanta, Road America, definitely one of the most popular racing facilities around the USA. One of the longest ones as well. I believe that track is somewhere around the range of 4 miles in length or so, kind of around that area. It's just a shy bit longer than the Circuit of the Americas. Definitely a very popular facility, though, and one that definitely supports some great racing. Some of the most thrilling battles that I've seen in my 2-3 years of doing race spot commentary have been at Road America. So that is bound to be one exciting track to go to for a season finale.
Let's talk a bit more about Road Atlanta. I tell you what, sometimes I like to be the RaceSpotTV historian from time to time as we ride on board with Escajeda and plunge our way in towards turn number 5. As I was saying, just a little bit earlier, Dr. Don Panos did buy the facility back in 1996 and had to introduce that chicane to meet international motorsport standards, but really developed an iconic corner that you ask anyone about, especially on the iRacing service where that off-track can be just infuriating at times. They will tell you just how fun that corner can be. From there, Petit Le Mans ran here for the very first time back in 1998. It was won by Ferrari 333 SP, driven by Wayne Taylor, a name that you will know from sports car racing of the modern era as well. Eric Van der Poel and Emmanuel Collard, another big name there as well. That then became one of the showcase events for the ALMS as they adopted the ACO rule set back in 1999. And since then, Petit Le Mans really has become one of the biggest events, not just in American sports car racing, but across the globe as well. It really is just one of those tracks that people love. It's a driver's track, it's a driver's facility, repaved back in 2007, with motorcycle changes being made the following year. But the funny thing that really strikes out to me about that point, Nolan, as we jump on board with Dave Anderson here in the Hot Wheels car as well, is that in 2017, they removed all the changes that they made for the motorcycle bikes to come here and race, because guess what? Motorcycles never came here in over 10 years of action. So we now have the version that we're watching now is that motorcycle layout, but in real life, the track is the same as it was back in 2003.
I mean, when you kind of look at it, you can see the little couple of chicanes that they made for the motorcycles just coming down through the S's. Now, the chicanes, I guess, to say they're far from popular is a little bit of an understatement as well. It's one of those things that people are not really a big fan of, and it actually was a club circuit even here on iRacing, those little chicanes. You can imagine how much that layout ended up being used, though. A lot of people tend to prefer the full course of this, and for good reason for what we're seeing here today. It's such a fun track to drive, like you said, a pure driver's track as well. One other change that they put in as well, you saw that road that just darted off to the left on the exit of turn 11, that actually leads down to another almost 90-degree hairpin, once again, an addition for a temporary club course.
And let's kind of expand on that. It leads us quite nicely into something we were not sure how we wanted to talk about here live on RaceSpotTV, because obviously the Real Racers Virtual Club were cheering on Stefan Wilson in his pursuit of an Indy 500 win this past weekend. And starting from 28th, it was looking quite promising for the Kuzik Motorsports outfit associated with Andretti Autosports, and just a mistake, whether it's a mistake or a brake failure is actually yet to be determined, the last that I saw. But whatever happened there, Nolan, a big crash for Stefan, diving down onto pit road. And we were talking about this before we came on air. Pit entry in Indy is one of the toughest things you can do. You have very little braking power. You don't use those brakes for 30 laps plus at a time to then require all of that braking force with so little downforce. It's easy to make a mistake. And our RaceSpot producer Tyler Maxon, who's not on today's broadcast, he was saying when he came to this very track and used that pit road exit that you were that you were just talking about off to the left-hand side down the hill here and through turn 12. He was saying that when he was racing here in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge race just a couple of months ago, in the real world, he almost binned it coming down onto pit road. That would have thrown away a second-place finish in his IMSA debut. It happens to the best of us, and it's a shame, but Stefan will be back, and I'm sure back at Indy for more.
He also mentioned as well, Tyler did, that pit road is obviously one of the easiest places you can crash, not just at Indianapolis or Road Atlanta, but on any racetrack, really. And Indianapolis especially, I mean, you're going from 200 plus miles an hour down to what is the speed there? 60, 70 miles an hour for Indy cars. We're talking a second, if that. It's such a drastic speed difference. The fact that your brakes are so cold, it really it shows you just how difficult that sort of thing can be. And it's important to know, Wilson was not the only driver that had that happen to him as well. I believe Will Power also had to spin there as well. There was quite a few people that were having that issue, not just in the race, but throughout the weekend as well.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I said this to you as well. My teammate, who I run with here on the iRacing service, works as an engine engineer for Ilmor and was on Simona Di Silvestro's car, and she had the same issue as well. So it's not uncommon, and I'm sure we'll hear it more in the upcoming years as well. By the way, while we've been babbling on about all sorts of things, it's finally starting to close up between Dave Anderson and Escajeda in front. And of course, this is a battle with championship implications, a phrase that I love to use. But for Escajeda here, you know what I do, Nolan? If I see Dave Anderson looming in my rearview mirrors, let him on through and hold on to 8th position, knowing you should be still cycling your way to the front of this championship.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you're a guy like Escajeda, it's more easy to just kind of let somebody through as well, but it also kind of goes to your head as well. Only 4 points separate you and the race leader, so not only do you want to get the race, you want to get the points lead, you also want to extend that gap out by as much as you possibly can, because you might not be in this type of position again for the remainder of the season. You look back at Rick Sheldon, who is still sitting outside of the points. Hayden Fisher is only going to gain 1 point. At the moment, as it sits, Escajeda is going to, I think, be tied with Rick Sheldon for the points lead. Might not take it from here. However, I think he's still going to be 1 point behind, if my math is right, if Anderson gets past him.
We'll have to wait and see if maybe we can get some updated points, as Anderson a bit deep onto the brakes into 10A, just about holds on to that car as well. Thought for a moment it was going to pitch around on him, but Hot Wheels, I guess you have full control of what your Hot Wheels does, and Dave Anderson showing that here as well. Across the start-finish line, wonderful nose cam look that you get, just that sense of speed that these drivers are dealing with as well. Less than 10 minutes to go here in round 8 of the Real Racers Virtual Club Spring Formula 3 season, and Anders Krone, Nolan, still leads from Nolan Siegel. 5 seconds is the gap, and Siegel has almost 5 seconds further to Max Butler in third. He was starting to look quite comfortable for that final step on the podium.
He very much is. I mean, you've got Max Butler, who is currently kind of in a bit of a no man's land almost. I mean, you take a look at him up on the track right now. He's got about 4.5 seconds up to Siegel, and it's about another 6 seconds back to Ball. Oh, and speaking of which, Dave Anderson takes a slide right behind. That is going to give back to Escajeda a lot of breathing room. Turn 7 catches yet another driver out. One of the first drivers to be called out by this, though, in race conditions. It's all been in practice and qualifying for today. It was only a matter of time, though, really.
It really was. I mean, we saw it during the qualifying session as well, where he tried to get that onboard lap around. And I think, for Rick Sheldon, this is what I just was about to mention. The producer, Hugo Luis, was reading my mind. The championship leader getting a bit too friendly and familiar with the inside of the curb at turn number 3 and spins around the car. For Dave Anderson, just a little bit too happy in getting that car turned in and getting onto the power. Loses a couple of positions as well. No positions, in fact, just a bunch of time. Now 7 seconds adrift from Matthew Escajeda, who will be, I'm sure, pretty happy that he will not have to look in his rearview mirror, at least for the next couple of laps. In fact, it's Sheldon who's having to look in his rearview mirror, and that's more important if you ask me here, because whatever points that Sheldon can recover from this race, he needs to hold Nicholas Leo behind him, Nolan, heading into the final 3 rounds of this championship.
That 69 car is really looking to pressure Sheldon as well for the 11th position on the racetrack. One of the only battles we got out there at the moment as a result of that latest spin. So you got these two drivers sitting about 4/10, give or take, between them here. Looks like they're a little bit slower, though, through turn 1. It keeps a much tighter line. Rick Sheldon, meanwhile, using all of the track. At this time, very conservative with how much curb he takes through turn 3.
Almost like the I-85 trip that the virtual I-85 trip that he took up here to Brazelton, Georgia, was being like on the highway to hell, as there you go, not as aggressive in terms of using the curb through turn 5, but Leo is getting a great run. What's happened to Jeremy Clark? Down the timing screens for the 87 and straight back to pit road. Left-hand side of your screen, you can see now the 87 sits in 12th spot. And as the gap opens up between Sheldon and Leo coming onto the back straightaway, I've only got one question in the back of my mind. What did Clark do? Oh, just a bit too happy on the throttle, and I made that exact mistake myself. I feel the pain for Jeremy Clark, and finds himself dropping Nolan from a 6th place finish.
Talk about a perfectly placed camera there, right under the bridge. Came to a stop right underneath it. No better angle to show what happened than that. That was the other thing I kind of wanted to mention as well. I never really had the moment to before that was turn 10. It's also another very easy spot to lose the back end, particularly up and over the hill for 11. Lost a bit before that, though, so probably the classic case of just getting on the power a little bit too early. I mean, you got 220 horsepower being sent straight to the rear wheels. It's a very easy mistake to do. So Nicholas Leo now back to this battle here, trying to do battle with Rick Sheldon, see if he can maybe find his way back up into the 11th position.
And in terms of the championship, well, +1 to everyone. Then Escajeda into 6th, Fisher into 9th, Sheldon into 10th. So for Sheldon, I mean, really 6 minutes left on the clock, and he'll be hoping that he can just hold on with Nicholas Leo in the yellow car, darting and diving in towards turn number 6. Just leaves enough room there. Oh, I thought for a second the 69 was going to throw it down the inside. He sets up the move down this back straightaway. Doesn't get the best run, but in the draft now, Nolan, down this back straightaway.
The draft and continuing to close. These two drivers 4/10 apart and starting to close. Gap is down to just 3/10. Strock a quarter of a second. 2/10. Is it close enough for a time? Leo's looking for the spot. Decides to back out wisely. Still gets a good run, though, on the exit of turn 10B. He could have him here to turn 1.
He's being conservative, though. It'll be 5 minutes left on the clock for them, so an estimated 4 laps, you would think. Looks to the inside. Sheldon covers him off. Side by side, will they run in through turn 1? Leo tries to think about it, but backs out quite wisely. You don't want to make that happen. Thinks about the over-under as well, but Sheldon covers it off and closes the door. It's going to come down to the wire here, and I would say Leo is looking a little bit more racy at this point in time.
You saw Sheldon miss the apex a little bit through turn number 3. That allows Leo to close the door even more. Kind of extends as a result of dirty air as they threw themselves through 4, 5, and 6, but this gap closing all the time and continuing to just reel themselves in out through turn 7. Who's going to get a better run? I think the answer will be Nicholas Leo. Look at how much closer he is this time around as they enter that back straightaway. Just 2/10 between them. The pass is imminent. And
I'm looking at the timing screen. These guys are going about 2 seconds slower than your race leader. We might actually be looking at lap traffic as there goes Leo, squeezed down to the white line, gets on through. I don't think this is over. Watch for Sheldon to try and hold him up here. But they are not too far away off from being lapped, I would think. So maybe, just maybe, watch for Anders Krohn to close on these guys. He's got a very comfortable 5-second buffer to Nolan Siegel. No sort of challenge, and that's maybe what we expected in this race, Nolan. We thought we'd have the side-by-sides going. We'd have Anders Krohn versus Nolan Siegel on one side, and then the championship battle on the other. It hasn't necessarily worked out that way, and maybe, and just maybe, you're a bit more right than I was when we were talking at the start of this one, where open-wheel cars, maybe they can race around here, but it's not always easy, and especially in a light car like the Formula 3. Nicholas Leo loses it in through turn 5, and Rick Sheldon says, thank you very much, I'll take a top 10 finish back for myself.
And that's going to put Leo right under fire from Anders Krohn, just behind, who's just now up and over the hill, and now has Leo in the sights. There is Anders Krohn, just on the right side of the screen, coming in through turn 6, so lap traffic could very well play a factor into this one. Take a ride on board with Nicholas Leo. Oh, that car was loose before he even turned in for the corner, so that car was probably going to go around regardless. The curbing just exacerbated the situation.
Interesting onboard look there, because kind of seeing two different pictures. I see that picture definitely, but I also see the picture where Leo clobbers the inside curb, and you can't do that in any car, let alone a low-slung open-wheel machine. Anders Krohn puts one more car one lap down, and Leo now won't have the chance to close on Sheldon, so it will be at the line with 2 minutes and 40 seconds to go. 3 laps left on our agenda, because unless Krohn wants to back himself up into Nolan Siegel here, well, he is going to have to do that 3rd lap around as well. No sort of pressure, though, at the end of the day, Nolan. I mean, it's been pretty easy for Krohn, unlike last week where he potentially made things just a bit more difficult for himself.
It's a very easy pass so far. I mean, you look around and, I mean, you got Anders Krone 5 seconds clear of Nolan Siegel just in behind. At the moment, you know, kind of looking around the track, the closest cars on the course are actually between Dave Anderson and Kurt Panzengrau in the number 1 car. Now, of course, Panzengrau is actually having a good day himself. He's up 4 spots where he started today, tied with Escajeda for most spots gained in the race. He's only a second and a half behind Dave Anderson, who, of course, had that little bit of a slide earlier on to put him out of reach of Escajeda. So these two guys only about a second and a half behind, but it's still going to be a bit of a long shot for Anderson to try to really reel him in.
It's going to be tough. I'm watching to try and see exactly where Anders Krone is in relation to the start-finish line, because that will determine if the white flag waves this time around, or we will get at least one more after this as well. There you can see Krone down the hill and across the start-finish line. It will be, unless I'm mistaken here, 2 more laps to go, and I tell you what, Anders Krone has picked up the pace here in the closing stages of this race. A 1:13.977. That is only 100th, Nolan, off his fastest lap time in today's race.
Anders Krone wants to try to get this race done and over with. He also wants to make sure that if he happens to have a slide, he's got as much of a buffer room to work with between himself and Nolan Siegel as he can. So about 1.5 laps remaining now for the 47-car race leader, who, just like at Silverstone, has led pretty much every single lap so far this race. Well, he has led every lap so far in this race, at least. Anders Krone looking to go on another tear and go back-to-back with his win at Silverstone.
I'm still not sure exactly if this is the final lap or not. If Krone wants to back the pack up, which is within his rights and might be able to do so and get to the checkered flag, it would not be the final trip. It would be, the final trip around the Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta, but it's all up to Krone. We saw the game 7 days ago. Are there going to be any games here today? Under the bridge comes the 47 car. Plunges down the hill, 10 seconds left on the clock. He isn't slowing down, so 2.5 miles left to go as Barney gets that white flag up there. And I tell you what, Nolan, you in your role as a track marshal in the real world sometimes, you were commenting on the former Barney the Flagman. Tell us what you saw when Barney was vigorously waving those flags.
I see a poor iRacing track marshal who's about to have some very sore arms in the morning. One of the first things that I was told when learning to wave flags as a track marshal about 2 years back, I was told, wave by the wrist. Do not ever wave with your full arm like that. It's the perfect way to just wreck your arm within seconds. So the fact he's able to do that for so long, I think that's a testament to how strong that right arm of his really is.
Well, for Barney the Flagman, he's got competition in terms of iRacing characters. We've now got Benny, the pace car drivers, so we'll see Barney versus Benny, who ends up more popular, and you'll be able to see both of them in action tomorrow night in the eNASCAR Pro Invitational as they head to the streets of Chicago and to try out a brand new configuration, a laser scan configuration, scanned through the dead of night. Here, though, out of turn 10A in Brazelton, Georgia, it is Anders Krone. For the second time in 2 weeks, he'll be victorious on a Tuesday night in the Real Racers Virtual Club Formula 3 spring season and takes the checkered flag here at Road Atlanta. Dominant fashion from flag to flag victory there, but it is not over for Anderson. He's got to look backwards as Panzengrau, the defending champion, tries to see if he can close the gap to the 3 cars in front of him in this season's championship, Nolan.
8.5 tenths separate Anderson from Panzengrau just behind. Don't think it's going to be close enough. He's only falling back further and further. 0.87 now, not going to be closer to make that dive. So if Anderson can keep himself steady here out of turn 10B, he's going to have himself all nice and sorted for the start finish here.
No major drama then, so Anderson will hold on to the 7th spot with Panzengrau in 8. We'll wait for Hayden Fisher, who came into this round 2nd place in the championship. We'll see exactly how things shake out there. There is the 11 car. Fisher usually slings a BMW around the track. I wonder if he's got some experience at this track as well. That's something we'll get to talk about with these drivers in the post-race interviews as well. Lots of them have real-world experience. We'll see if they've ever made the trip to Georgia. Just about 90 minutes drive from Atlanta. Have to head yourself northeast. Here comes Sheldon then, the championship leader, the final car on the leading lap, it would seem. And the Eddie Van Halen inspired livery will close off track action here then at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Let's take a look at our race results here in round 8 of the Real Racers Virtual Club Spring Formula 3 season. Anders Krone once more makes his way into victory lane. Dominant display from pole to victory. Nolan Siegel, great to see him the USF 2000 driver on the road to Indy, making an appearance here on a Tuesday night. We'll see if the California native has a bit more for Krohn next time around. 6 seconds separating the top two driver. Max Butler had a bit of contact with Krohn 7 days ago. He'll be pretty happy with the podium here, especially given that he beat his brother, who had some difficulties. Jackson Bull, Zach Hudson, Matthew Escajeda, Dave Anderson, Kurt Panzengru, Hayden Fisher, and Rick Sheldon will round out the top 10 drivers, with Nicholas Leo, Jeremy Clark finishing 1 lap down after some issues. Joe Butler, our only non-finisher, after some big contact, down through the S's.
Early on that he made that mistake as well. It's so unfortunate for Joe Butler. You know, he had such a tough run there, so hopefully he'll be able to bounce back next week.
And of course, the 25-minute action that we've just brought you has been brought to you in partnership with the Stephen Wilson Racing Academy. We'll hopefully get to see Stephen back in action here on a Tuesday night in the next coming weeks as he just calms down from all of the excitement from the month of May and his attempt at the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500. Always on hand to mentor and give advice to the drivers here in the Real Racers Virtual Club, and the Stephen Wilson Racing Academy can do the same for you as well. Merit Partners is a high-end boutique car dealership specializing in Porsche and Ferrari. The focus of Merit is to build long-term relationships over time, choosing to have a narrower focus and going deeper with clients. Choose Merit Partners for all your high-end car choices. So let's work our way then into our post-race interviews, and let's see if we can bring in Anders Krohn, victorious once more here on a Tuesday night. Anders, that was a dominant display. No games were played here with Nolan Siegel like we saw you do with Max Butler last time out at Silverstone. How much fun did you have here at Road Atlanta?
This was amazing. I love Road Atlanta, and especially in this car. I mean, it's just crazy how much speed you can carry through the corners, but it's just so sensitive because it's such a stiff little car that yeah, you have to be inch perfect. But yeah, that was good stuff.
And we kind of had this discussion as well, because I've raced in an IndyCar around here on the iRacing service, and I really think it's one of the most fun combinations you can have. You really have to trust yourself, find all the different crevices around the track that you can extend that track just that little bit more, find the confidence in the bumps, and really just throw yourself around the track. Next time we'll head to Watkins Glen, a very different track compared to this one. What do you think about heading to upstate New York?
Oh man, Watkins Glen is my favorite road course in North America, so I absolutely cannot wait. And yeah, it's another fast-flowing track. You know, as you said, completely different, but at the same time very, very fast. A lot of camber, a lot of you know, a lot of undulations to take advantage of. So no, it was a great night. But yeah, I know that Nolan's going to be coming hard next week. So yeah, and Max for that matter as well.
Should be fun. Before we let you go, Anders, let's just talk to you about, you know, the past weekend and wrapping up the month of May. It's such a special occasion. It was so cool to see fans on TV. History being made with Elio Castroneves becoming part of a select group of 4-time winners at the Brickyard. What do you think about what we've just seen, and how excited are you for next year when hopefully we'll get full fans back at attendance at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
I tell you, I was on site and was fortunate enough to be down on the grid, you know, for all the pre-race ceremonies with national anthem and what have you, and it was goosebumps the entire first half of the race, and then it sort of settled in a bit, and then it was goosebumps again the latter part of the race, and you know they said it was only 135,000 people, but I don't know, it felt a whole lot more like 200,000 to me, but it was just amazing. It was everything I remembered the Indy 500 being, which is just goosebumps. The emotions are high. You really feel the history. It was epic. So yeah, to then take that another notch up for next year is going to be incredible. But yeah, wow, what a weekend.
Congratulations on your victory once more, Anders. Looking forward to seeing you in action from Watkins Glen in 7 days' time.
All right, thanks so much, guys.
So victorious once more, it is Anders Krohn, and well, the confusion is about to, I think, intensify up here in the RaceSpotTV commentary booth, because I think we are going to get Nolan Siegel standing by with RaceSpot's own Nolan Rempel. So Nolan, take it away with Nolan.
Well, first off, Nolan, happy to join you up here. And first off, how dare you make me confuse Arjuna? And second to you, Mr. Siegel, how dare you steal my first name? Anyways, it's been a good race so far today. A pretty quiet day all the way around, though, for you, Nolan. So I'll kind of walk us through it. You were looking to be really trying to give the fight to Anders Krohn, especially in qualifying, but at the end of the day, he was just too quick for everybody out there.
Yeah, I was trying to keep up with him, and on the first lap, I had a bit of a Code Brown moment coming out of turn 10. So it just got to that kind of 5 second gap-ish, and then we were running about the same lap time, and nothing really happened for the rest of the race. So bit boring, but still good to get out there with everyone.
We kind of look around this track, and it's a track that's definitely more designed for sports car racing. It's definitely known for sports car racing. We don't typically see open wheel cars making a visit here at this track in Brazelton, Georgetown, all too much. So, what is it like for you to see down on the track there? I mean, it's you got sport cars race there, of course, home to the Petit Le Mans, so it must be a completely different experience to drive an open wheel machine around here, especially one like the Formula 3 cars.
Yeah, I've never raced here in real life. I've never had the pleasure, but I think in the Formula car you just get a lot of aero wash when you get close to people, and the draft isn't too big in these cars, so it's pretty difficult to pass and difficult to follow, and really, really easy to make small mistakes that just keep costing you a little bit of time every lap. So yeah, I think it would be a bit more interesting in a sports car race, especially a mixed class type race like Petit Le Mans, but still fun in these cars.
You definitely looked you're having a really fun time out there as well. We kind of look forward to the way things are going to go for the rest of the series. We stay stateside here for the remainder of the season, go to Watkins Glen, Sonoma, and then, of course, Road America. So what do you think we can see from you from those next few races? Because those are, of course, 3 tracks that really seem to favor open-wheel racing.
Yeah, Road America is one of my favorite tracks, so looking forward to that one. Basically, just all the big draft tracks with long straights are good for racing in these cars, just because it takes a lot to tow up on someone and have good passing opportunities. So looking forward to any tracks that promote good racing.
And hopefully we'll be seeing just as much entertaining racing next week as well. Well, before I let you go here then, Nolan, anybody like to shout out for that number 10 car?
Oh yeah, all my sponsors, the team today did a great job. The fixed setup was perfect, so thank you to everyone involved.
And thank you, Nolan, for taking the time to join us out here tonight here at the Dollar Formula here at the Real Race Virtual Club round at Road Atlanta, and hope to talk to you again next week. Well, that was your second place finisher there, Nolan Siegel. Arjuna, my brain is fried now because of that.
The USF 2000 driver on the road to Indy. Great to have him out on a Tuesday, and hopefully we'll see him challenging Anders Krohn in 7 days' time from the virtual Watkins Glen. Let's bring in the final step of the podium then, and Max Butler. And Max, you had some contact with Anders Krohn last time around. A much more clean race, I would say. You did have to fight for that one, though. Not so easy. Had to get on past Jackson Bull to secure that third place finish.
Yeah, Jackson is very fast, and he's made it very apparent to me outside of this race that he is coming to get me. So I was just biding my time until he made a mistake, and I managed to get by him. And I know he's feeling that one because he definitely had the pace to beat me today.
What was this track like, especially trying to race wheel to wheel? Because you guys were really fighting it out, elbows out, in terms of getting out of turn 7 and that run down in towards turn 10. It's a very low weight car that seems to be a bit difficult to try and get the power down, especially with such a bumpy track here, but ultimately it's such a rewarding time when you get things right.
Oh man, if you just have to nail turn 8, I think it is, and just get a good run down to 10A. That's the key. Try to hold that inside line, but throughout the rest of it, you're basically biding your time until you see them make a mistake. But it is an extremely close race here, and so you really just got to make sure that you nail those straights and get by and try to sail away.
I want to ask you about this past weekend. I talked to Anders about the Indy 500, but for you being behind the camera, I'm going to ask you the same exact question. 135,000 fans reported. It did seem like there was a lot more, but the energy, even on TV, sitting out here on the west coast of the U.S., I could feel it when Elio came across the line to join that select group of racers. How excited are you for next year when we get even more people at the track and really get back to normalcy at the Indy 500?
I'm extremely excited. This year alone, I think I wanted a lot of people to win this race. A lot of good drivers out there, great guys. But Elio winning was the most electric I've ever seen that place, ever. I've been to that race a few times now, and to hear the roar the crowd gave and chanting Elio's name was just something that you don't get to see a lot. And obviously, coming out of a pandemic, it's a bit of a culture shock when you don't get to see a lot of people, and then you go and you hear thousands and hundreds of thousands of people chanting someone's name. It was a crazy experience, and I can only wonder what's going to be like next year. So definitely tune into that one as well.
Great to see you in action, and we'll see you then in 7 days' time from upstate New York.
See you guys.
So that was Max Butler, and I tell you what, with the podium interviews done, always great here in the Real Racers Virtual Club to talk to more than just that podium. So let's start by bringing in Matthew Escajeda, who finished in 6th place in today's race, but of course in a very close championship fight. We'll wait and see just how close Escajeda is to leading this championship once more. Matthew, talk to us about your race there. Up 4 positions on the day, working your way almost into the top 5 here at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, I just tried to keep it really clean and pretty much did. I was losing time. I had a nice battle with Dave Anderson, but he was catching me, and especially in turn 1, I was just struggling, so he would always catch back up to me every lap. And then he spun out in the hairpin, and then I had an easy race after that. But yeah, I just saw guys falling in front of me one by one, just tried to keep it clean, and it worked out.
And in terms of the championship battle, Matt, I think just staying clean is going to be so important, because with people like Anders and Nolan at the front, they're going to be taking, the lion's share of points. So the gaps between you, Hayden Fisher, and Rick Sheldon, they might end up being single digits once we get to Road America for the final race of the season, where honestly, just finishing in the right position might get you that championship after 11 races here in this season.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain I'm in the points lead now, but maybe just by a couple. But yeah, I got to keep my foot on the pedal.
You do indeed. We'll see you back in action then in 7 days' time from the virtual Watkins Glen. And now let's bring in another one of our drivers, defending champion, I should say, Kurt Panzager, who's standing by with Nolan Rempel.
Indeed I am. So, Kurt, we come to the conclusion of yet another race, and we start to enter that final quarter of the season. You're still sitting in 4th place, so it's looking like it might be a bit of a tough chance here for you to be able to defend that title, but do you still have hopes that you can maybe hold them off for the last 3 races?
Oh, the quality of driving is so much better this time around. I'm going to be lucky if I hang on to my 4th.
Well, here's hoping you will be able to hang on to your 4th. We, of course, look forward, finishing the bottom half today, but still up 4 spots where you started today. So by far, still an improvement compared to what could have been today. Still came away with some points as well. Do you intend to maybe continue on gaining some points and maybe go for another top 5 finish before the end of the season?
I'd love to have that happen. I'm working hard at it, except everybody else is too.
Everybody's certainly working very hard, including drivers for the likes of Anders Krohn. Well, Kurt, thanks for taking the brief time to come on over and join us here tonight. Best of luck when we get around next week to Watkins Glen.
All right, thanks, guys.
So defending champion there, stepping into the booth. Not sure if it's going to work out in his favor now. One final interview. I think let's bring in Rick Sheldon of the 63. Rick, a difficult race for you coming in as the championship leader, but now we're headed back to the U.S., and I'm sure tracks that some of your community have some experience in. First question for you. Have you ever driven around the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta in real life in a real car?
Yes, I have. I had the pleasure of doing it a couple of different times in a Porsche GT4 Club Sport, a car that I had on the West Coast and I brought out to the East Coast. And actually had a great experience with a guy who asked me if he could drive it. I let him, and he crashed it, and he bought it from me.
I guess that's the only way it's got to work if that thing's happened. Talk to us about this past weekend as well, Rick, because you were, I think, trackside at the Indianapolis 500, and I've already asked Max Butler, and Anders Krohn about the atmosphere and the experience there, because it was special, watching it from California, just feeling the emotions of the fans on TV. I can't imagine what it was feeling like to be there in that crowd, the biggest sporting event since last year when everything shut down.
Yeah, I really did feel that too. And I have to tell you that being around that kind of humanity, it took a day or so, because I went out the previous week for qualifying, and it took a day. It felt really weird. And then all of a sudden it was just, I felt like it was just a ray of sunshine to have all these people around you. And the fear kind of goes away after a while. And it was great. And just from a humanitarian standpoint of just being with people, it really, it was a special time to be out there. And I was able to bring my wife, which was great. And we were able to spend the time together and with a bunch of friends. And so, unfortunately for Steph, it was a rough go, but but the overall experience was definitely a great one, and we were all very proud of him and really enjoyed the race.
Well, let's bring it back to the championship before we let you go then. You came into this race in the championship lead. I have a feeling it's going to be single digits between Hayden Fisher, Matthew Escajeda, and you in terms of the top three at the standings. With the likes of Anders Krohn and Nolan Siegel jumping in, you've got the consideration of they're going to be taking the majority of the points at the top of the field. So it really is about making sure you are as high up the field and finishing there consistently now in the next 3 rounds to get to that final round and put yourself in the hunt for the championship here in the spring Formula 3 season.
Yeah, I got to get it together. I'm leaking oil the last couple races. I can't quite figure out why. Maybe it's just because I've been back and forth to the Indy thing and really focused on that. But that's just an excuse. The reality is I still got to show up and drive, and I'm getting slower, not faster. So, and I am competing against Hayden and Kurt and definitely Matthew. And I feel really good about the next 3 tracks we're going to be at, but I know so do they. So I felt good about today, and I had a good thing, and I just punted it away. So, I've got to do a better job. It's on me because really I gave that away. I feel like I did the same thing in Silverstone, and I did it again. So it's really just mistakes. Those guys are just driving better than me right now, and I got to do a better job.
Looking forward to seeing the 2 fights, both at the top of the races between the real-world drivers and this championship fight as well. Thanks for joining us, Rick, and we'll see you in 7 days' time from upstate New York.
Thanks, Arjun. I appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you there.
It's going to be a fun trip to a draft-heavy track, Nolan, and I mean, wrapping up our coverage here and looking forward, I guess, to that trip to upstate New York. It's going to be wild, and it's getting very close in the championship standings. Take a look at those last 3 rounds because, well, it's a trip crisscrossing the U.S. and ending in Elkhart Lake.
And we kick off that journey here today in Georgia, and no doubt it's going to continue as we swing on over to upstate New York for Watkins Glen. Bound to be an incredibly entertaining 25-minute race. Watkins Glen, another one of those tracks that IndyCar goes to in the real world along with them, so for the 6 hours of the Glen. And no doubt that is also going to be one fantastic race, and I can't personally wait for it.
It's going to be so much fun, but I guess it's time to say goodbye once more on a Tuesday evening. The Real Racers Virtual Club Spring Formula 3 season always brings the action, and we are delighted to be covering it here live on RaceSpotTV. For our entire team, for Hugo Luis down in the production booth controlling the action, for Nolan Rempel, my name is Arjuna Kankipati. We'll be back in 7 days' time from upstate New York, and we'll see you there live on RaceSpotTV.